when we needed the greatest generation of the 30s or 40s or
happen before the election because there are too many Republicans that are afraid that their wrongdoings are going to.
It's unacceptable, and I'm not going to sit here, stay silent, and not call it out. I'm calling out the lies.
Do they think that we are so stupid that we will not notice and find out?
Yo, it's Thursday night. It's 7:30 p.m. We're on at the normal time. Here we are. Here we go. I got your boy, not 2 Cent, but Ric Flair. Woo! We're having a good time. We are having a good time. I got the purple pen out. You know what happens when we got the purple pen? Everything is serious from here on out. There are no jokes. There is no sarcasm. There are no problems whatsoever. It is just seriousness all the time. We're live on YouTube. Here's my 2 cents. We're live on ramtv.live. We're live on TikTok for a little bit longer. You're going to give you a sneak peek, give you the taste. I give you a little bit of taste. Run on over to YouTube. Look for Here's My 2 Cents. I would love for you guys to subscribe, click the follow, the bell, send it to your friends, send it to your grandmother. Everybody needs to hear from me. Everybody wants it. Everybody loves it. Big topics for tonight. Let's talk about some crazy stuff. The Democrats are talking about what they're going to run on in 22. And spoiler alert, it's not the crap they've been pulling for the last year. Imagine that. I'm not going to get to it too much yet. Going to go down the rundown a little bit more. Here we go. We're also probably going to hit some Russia here because this thing actually might happen. There's Jason. He jumped over with me from the TikTok. Thank you so much. Chad, you the man. I love all of you for coming on over. I want the rest of you guys to come on over too. Go over to Here's My 2 Cents. Search for Here's My 2 Cents on the YouTube. I want you guys to follow. Hey, sorry about that you live in Chicago. That's terrible. Cass, I love you. One of my very, very, very good friends when I was in the Air Force, we called him Cass. And he was a good dude. From Maryland. I actually used to live in Abingdon. Well, actually, I was in Bel Air, so you know where that is. Anyway, you guys are distracting me. Hold on to these for a little bit here, Juan. We're going to talk a little bit of Russia, of course. We got to talk about some view changes when it comes to the mandates and the like. Right off the bat, I am not a doctor. I am not getting any medical advice. If you infer any medical advice from me, don't, because I'm a moron. I am not giving any medical advice whatsoever. I am talking about people's approach, rhetoric, mandates, laws, and the like. I am by no means talking about efficacy of anything having to do with any sort of medical procedures. If you take any inference from that, you're kind of a moron because I have already told you I am a moron. So please do not listen to any inferences that you come up with in your head. If you are over here on the TikTok, I love all of you, but you have to come on over to the YouTube. I love you, but you're going to get kicked off soon. Let's talk about something crazy. It looks like the Democrats have become self-aware. And by this, I mean they're looking at polling data. Something to keep in mind is polling data is not, I'm going to call 100 people. And if I say, do you like hamburgers? And 60 of them say yes, and 40 of them say no, that will actually not be presented as 60% said yes and 40% said no. There's interpolation that goes into that. There's this, for lack of a better term, fuzzy math that goes into it. What time of year was it? Was it more men than women? Was it more of this demographic than that demographic that we reached? What time of day was it? When we did it previously, what were the numbers? When you put it against the bell curve and they do all kinds of this interpolation, that is to say they skew it the way they want it. So when you have actual polling that shows a 14-point swap in people who are identifying as Democrat to Republican, do you think that's the most accurate? Do you think it's 14%? Or do you think they went, holy cow, people are talking to their neighbors, and if I say it's anything less than 14%, they're going to pull the BS flag? I think it's a heck of a lot more. I think it's a lot more. And when you see a head-to-head edge, I think right now of 4 to 6 points towards the Republicans, that is shellacking territory for any party. If you hold a 4 to 6 point head-to-head lead, that is shellacking, because we really are talking about the popular vote, because it's popular vote, many, 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 many little votes, especially in the midterms, because we're not looking at the Electoral College, right? And so when you go the head-to-head of it, yeah, you're 6% across the board is a huge, huge advantage. I mean, I think it's there's a 99% win rate for the user at slot machines, and casinos get rich off of that. They only got 1% in their favor if you look at that math, if you follow where I'm going with that. They're looking at their polling. And the polling is so wildly showing that the American people are fleeing what they are doing. Now, let's do a little recap of what they've actually done through legislation. Because unlike what AOC wants and what Stephen Colbert wants, we have a representative body, we have three equal branches, and we pass laws in this nation. We have what's called the rule of law. If you ever heard that term, we have the rule of law, what does it actually mean? Well, yeah, laws are rules, and those are my rules. No. We don't have a ruler. We have the rule under the law. It's the law that we all then follow. And of course, it's supposed to be applied uniformly, and that doesn't happen if your last name rhymes with Clinton. And if you're, no one specific, but if your initials are Hillary Rodham Clinton, then the law doesn't necessarily apply. But I'm not going to say anyone specifically. Just vague. Just going to be vague there. Okay, so we have the rule of law, and we pass laws. So legislatively, what have the Democrats done? Because keep in mind, they have a 50-50 split in the Senate, which is half of our Congress, with the tiebreaker being the vice president. Also, you have a majority edge in the House, Democrat, and you have a Democrat at the White House. Let's pass some bills. Found you, American, and I love you. Love to see you. I do rock Joe. How many of your friends have you told that? You love the hoodie. Is it the Ron DeSavage? Did you get the Ron DeSavage? Because I love it. I'm going to have to start wearing it. I think I'm going to wear it at CPAC. Ooh, I'm jumping all over the place here a little bit. Susan, I think you sent me a heart emoji. I'm going to take it. Tammy sent me, I wish I had your cup. Tammy sent me a great cup, guys. Follow me over on the TikTok. I'll show you what it is. Sending support from California. California, my friend, we are sending you support and prayers because there's probably not a lot for you over there. Let me jump real quick. We are going to be at CPAC next weekend, not the one that we have coming up right now, but next weekend, 45, possibly 47 is going to be there because it could be Trump, it could be DeSantis, and they're both going to be there. Cruz is going to be there. Rubio is going to be there. There's going to be a lot. You're going to want to be there with me. Follow me on the TikTok. Follow me on the YouTube because I'm going to take you there with me. Okay, you guys distracted me, but I love it, and I love having a good time with you guys. What have they done legislatively? They've got the entire Congress, and they've got the executive branch. Let's pass some laws. You guys can do whatever you want. No, because what they're trying to pass is massive, overhauling, sweeping legislation. Because to them, a full-on tie in the Senate, and I think a 5 or 6 seat lead in the House of Representatives is a mandate to change the entire country in 1 year. Social safety networks, taxes, money spent, just flip it over. Just flip it over. There's a mandate. The whole country wants us. No, they don't. And thankfully, we had at least one senator in Manchin and then another in Sinema and some others that got away with not having to go on the record who are pushing back and saying that that's not what their people want. We have a representative body, which has actually been a good thing here. So legislatively, they jumped in. They passed their American Rescue Plan, I think they called it. They pumped $1,400 at people after having promised them $2,000. And then they added what's called the advanced child tax credit. And they try to claim that money lifted 40% of the population out of poverty. It's an extra $1,000. That's all it took. It took $1,000 to get 40% of the people out of poverty. I might call a little BS here. And for a lot of people, they're about to find out that was in advance. You were going to get that money anyway. So instead of getting it all right now when you're filing, you got half of it already. So your refund this year is going to be drastically different than last year. And people are going to misinterpret it and thinking they're getting more back and they're going to get less back in their heads when the reality is they actually already got half of it. Nice from West Virginia. You guys are as red gets. Every single county went for Trump. And I don't know how you guys keep putting Manchin up there, but he definitely did the right thing. We have, again, Democrats in control of the legislative body, Democrats in control of the executive body. All they've pretty much gotten passed is the American Rescue Act. And then you had a bunch of Republicans who jumped on with this idea. The Democrats were going to spend away. They jumped on this infrastructure deal, which isn't going to yield anything for years. And I absolutely hate it. You want to know why? Because we're never going to see what comes from it. There's never going to be a reporter who's going to go stand on a bridge and say, this bridge was built with the infrastructure bill. Nobody's going to see that. You're not going to see a new power plant go, this was built with Nothing. We're never going to see it. We're never going to see it. We're never going to see any fruits of that labor, and that money's going to get spent, and it's got all kinds of what's called earmarks in it, where it's going to go to this donor and that donor and all the other crap that goes on with it. So we spend money. That's what we've done. What else have we done? We've withdrawn from Afghanistan, looked like complete fools as we were doing it, and got some service members killed, got some civilians killed, and then went out of our way to kill some civilians as we were walking out the door because we don't know what the hell we're doing. And we hit them with, I hate the term drone, but it's what the term everybody knows, the drone strike. Hit a family, here's some money for your trouble, and now we're out. Okay, as a result, we got Russia on the move. And don't count out China. Don't think that they're not looking at Taiwan going, you looking good, because they are. That's exactly what's going on there. We also have them pushing the constant racial divide and the identity politics, which absolutely worked under Obama, did not work for Hillary, kind of worked under Biden. I think more people voted against Trump than voted for Biden. I think that's a fair assessment. They got drunk on the idea of identity politics again, and they're running 1,000 miles an hour with it. And people are rejecting it. So Politico, not far, far left, definitely not right, but of the middle left, I generally find, has an interesting article out that I've been actually eyeing for a couple days, where they're talking about the messaging that's now going out to Democrats. Mind you, these Democrats aren't going to stand next to Joe Biden, Joseph R. Byron, when he comes to their state. You have Abrams in Georgia, who had a scheduling conflict. President of the United States shows up in your state. You're running for governor, and you have a scheduling conflict. Okay. Then he made a couple other stops along the way. Those candidates had scheduling conflicts. President of the United States, most powerful man on the planet, and you have a scheduling conflict. Speaks volumes. So they are starting to change their approach, knowing they're going to get shellacked. I talked about the polling and what that's showing them, and I think that polling is really, really padded. I talked about their absolute failures. And I've talked about them distancing themselves away from Biden for a reason. They have to change what they're running on. They can't run on their identity politics. They can't run on you're a bigot, you're a bigot, you're a bigot. To disagree with me proves you're a bigot. To try to prove that you're not a bigot proves you're a bigot. They can't run on this. They're starting to see this. So this article from Politico is talking about what they could run on. They could run on backing the police. Stop me if this sounds familiar. Stop me. I want you to jump in here and stop me if this sounds familiar. You can run on backing the police. You can run on securing the border. Again, stop me if it sounds familiar. Stop me. You can run on parents' rights. Any of this sound familiar? Perhaps what they're telling them is to run as a Republican, that maybe conservative principles work. Maybe full top-down control doesn't work. And this is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. You have Don Lemon and you have all the other talking heads, especially on CNN, MSNBC, and the like, still backing, propping up Biden. What he's doing is working, and he's done this, and he's great, and he's good. And they're watching it fail over and over and over. And they're watching people run away from it, not only in the polling for the candidates, but also in their viewership. There's polling right now that shows more Democrats watch Fox than they watch CNN. Does anybody here think that Fox is even moderately in the middle? They're not, and they're proud of it. And they yell and scream about how everybody on the left is crazy. They use that language. You on the left are crazy. You liberal media are crazy. They're very open about it. So you have more Democrats going to Fox than are going to CNN. You would think you guys are getting a free show. Screw it. You're going to get a free show. I would love for you to come over to YouTube, but I'll give you a free show today. I'd much rather have you over on YouTube, but you're going to get a free show. You would think that maybe there'd be a realization, a light would come on, and they would say, my one swear one. They would say, well, shit, this doesn't work. Like maybe they could just go, when we have our full say and we get to do whatever we want, it ain't working. It doesn't work. Go to the border. Just because we're not covering it doesn't mean that hundreds of thousands of people are flooding that border every month. And that's just the encounters we have. How many are getting through? We never saw them. How many of them are carrying weapons and guns and human trafficking? And they're probably infected with something. We don't know because we're not testing them. There's flooding over that border. Maybe when you say in the debates, in the lead up to the actual presidential election, I want to surge the border, and people surge it. Maybe that doesn't work. Maybe when you fly people in the early morning, because Jen Psaki correctly corrected a reporter when he said it was in the middle of the night. No, it's the early morning. You got it. If it's after midnight, Jen, you got them. It's in the early morning. When you fly people in the early morning to states, and those states don't even know they're showing up, maybe that isn't good. Maybe when you spend your way out of debt with money you don't have, that increases debt. Maybe the supply chain isn't the reason for the inflation. Maybe the supply chain is the reason that there isn't stuff there, which then drives up price. But spending your way out of debt by increasing your debt, by printing money, maybe that increases the inflation. And maybe that hits everyone. I got to tell you, I'm not a rich person, but we're comfortable and I'm feeling it. What do you think is happening to the folks at the bottom? When you overspend and you print money, guess who you hurt? The people at the bottom. The people at the bottom. Case in point, it might sound silly. Dollar General is now $1.25. It reminds me of the old Adam Sandler skit. If you guys remember the toll booth Willie, I think the name was, and every time somebody stopped and say, "How much is it, Willie?" $1.25. So anytime I see that, I digest, but I say $1.25. So that, okay, it's $1.25. Who cares? You know what it does? It makes the math harder for me in my head when I'm trying to figure out taxes. And so I go up to the register with my daughter. She's 9 years old, and we always try to do our taxes in our head real quick. So she has an understanding of what taxes are, and we do quick math in our head. It's just something we like to do. But when you add 25 cents to it, now you got to do an extra step. So it bothers me. But I digest a little bit. We're having some fun today. That's a 25% increase in your cost, in cost to consume. 25%. Their stuff went up 25%. Your gas has gone up. Your food has gone up. And it hurts people at the bottom. Maybe we put in policies that lower prices, from deregulation, maybe opening up a pipeline, maybe opening up some fracking leases on federal land, maybe not being dependent on other people. Maybe. I don't know. It was kind of working. I see people online that are still saying the president doesn't affect prices of gas after they said he affected prices of gas when it went down 2 cents, after they said he doesn't affect the prices of gas when it went up 40 cents. I still see that. And they want to tell me that I have failed economics 101, that the supply has affected it. Guess what you have less of when you, I almost swore. Guess what you have less of when you drill less? You have less fuel. And as a result, it goes up in price. And then everything you consume goes up in price. I don't know. I tried. Okay. We're going back. They are running on lies. They are telling each other, look it up, it's on Politico. I should pull it up for you guys. They're telling them to run on border security, parents' rights, back in the blue. Or vote for a Republican. Maybe that's what you could do. Because one of two things here. They're going to govern like they're Republicans, or they're lying to you to get your votes. William, I thank you. Thank you for being here. Which one do you think it is? Do you think this Democrat who ran on liberal policies is now running on back in the blue, border security and parents' rights? Do you think he's going or she's going to govern under those terms? Or do you think they're going to revert back to their liberal policies? Which one? Which one? They might be lying to you. Maybe. Or if you actually want to back the blue, and you actually want parents' rights, and you actually want to secure the border, vote Republican. Crazy idea. Crazy idea. And then we can neuter Joseph R. Byron, and we can do this. Okay, we had a little fun with that. We got a little bit more time here. I'm glad you guys are getting a free show. These guys down here are getting a free show. Throw some up there, Juan. Let me see what's going on. We got some other topics to hit. Got a little bit more time. Let's just stay with the idea of changing the narrative. Going into the new year, again, I'm not a doctor. Don't listen to me. Don't make any inferences off of what I'm saying. I'm a moron. The amount of child trafficking going on at the border is definitely a problem. Any child trafficking is a problem. What I'm about to talk about, I am not talking about any efficacy. I'm not talking about whether you should or should not do something with medical. I'm a moron. If you infer that at all, that's on you. You're also a moron. I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. I hope the overlords accept that. I'm going to call those my prayers to the overlords. The narrative around masking is changing. Right now, And again, it was probably driven by polling or the actual election, because they almost lost the governor's mansion in New Jersey. They thought they were going to blow him out, won by a couple points, barely. So New Jersey calls the White House and says, we need to change some messaging on this. People aren't following this. They don't like this. They don't want this. The White House ignored it. New Jersey announces, deep blue. We got a couple videos we're going to watch here in a moment. New Jersey announces, Vermont, super, super blue. I'm from there. I believe Maryland, California, and somewhere else out west, all blue. Go, we're dropping the masks. Okay, your state, not my state. Okay, not for me. CDC didn't say to do that. And what happens when states do something against the CDC? We're going to kill everyone. We're going to kill everyone, and that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted to kill everyone. No. We understand that, says Jen Psaki. We understand that, says the White House. We know that. Where's the outrage? Where's the outrage? Maybe there's a reason we don't listen to you. Because when red states do something, they want to kill everyone. And when blue states do the exact same thing, you don't say anything about it. Or you get that lady on CNN who says the science has changed. Science has changed. A scientist got on television, looked at a camera, smiled, and said, the science has changed. The science has changed. Or what you're saying about the data has changed. How can we have these blue states going ahead of the White House? How can we have these blue states going ahead of the CDC about their mask mandates? Am I supposed to listen to the CDC if I live in a blue state? I don't know. I know here in Florida, we don't give up. But I didn't swear one. But we don't care. We live our own lives here. We live our own lives. Again, I'm not saying anything about efficacy, if you should or should not do anything. I'm a moron. I've hit this about 15 times already. Okay. You want to hit those videos, Juan? All right, he's going to post the videos. 2 Cent reacts. I'm going completely cold on this. Let's see what we got. Let's get that first one fired up there, Juan.
Do you know what the Cuban government calls anyone that opposes or dares to challenge the regime's views? They are called terroristas, aside from Gusano, of course. But the opposition in Cuba is criminalized. And a lot of you say, stop talking about Cuba, lady. The U.S. is not Cuba. It will never be Cuba. And you're right. We are 2 different countries because our rights are protected here. And we have freedom of speech above all. That's why this National Terrorism Advisory from the Department of Homeland Security is rather disturbing to me. I believe it expires in June. I don't know what type of twisted test run this is. But points number 2 and 3, they are valid points. Completely agree with those. But number 1, the sneaky point here, false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. So U.S. government institutions define what's absolutely true. And if I oppose that, I could be considered a terrorist threat. What type of what's going on?
Ma'am, you're not considered a terrorist threat. You are a terrorist threat. Anything against what these institutions is saying sows discord and is terrorist acts. So when the organizations themselves contradict themselves, are they committing terrorist acts? I don't know. If they said one thing last June, but they say the opposite now, is that a terrorist threat? When you hear this logic, and then you see it happening in Canada, where they're trying to enact these emergency powers, where they could say what you're doing is terrorist activity, there's never been more human rights taken away than right after an emergency. Does that make sense? They love emergencies. They love emergency powers, and all kinds of human rights get taken away. That idea of the terrorism and the extremism is a way to continue to vilify people. Let's be honest, people who look like me. People who look like me, law-abiding citizens, veteran, father, Christian, husband, all-around great guy, and it's to absolutely vilify me. That's what the reasoning is. All right, we got one more one. Let's go.
I love America. It's an amazing place. And do you know what I've come to realize, right? Americans, you basically do everything that we do, but you do it bigger and you do it better. Like, we have stupid people here. But your stupid people are world class. And that is not me saying, oh, all Americans are stupid. No, America also has the smartest people on the planet. What I'm saying is that when America does stupid, you do stupid. Like, our village idiot is in a park shouting at clouds. Yours is president.
All right, so when was that video? 2020 or 2021? Because we do have someone who screams at the sky, and I've commented on that before. We absolutely have someone who just come on, man, do the thing, do it. I don't know. Depends, because we're starting to find out that maybe Trump wasn't an idiot, and every time that he's right, and we find out about it later, and the journalists, no air quotes, but once the journalists are forced to actually look at it, and journalists have to see what actually happened. Let's go, Brandon, says Cass. Maybe we start to find out that that term would have been a lot different if we didn't push hoaxes. Maybe that would have changed. Jussie Smollett happened under Trump. Jussie Smollett tried to use this hate and people accepting hoaxes as a way to bolster himself, and it continued to create a divide, didn't it? All right, we got a minute left, but guess what? Get it on over here, Juan. We are sponsored. MyPillow has sponsored us. I can tell you, I love MyPillow. I have a MyPillow. I have the sheets. They're great. We really like them. Head on over to mypillow.com. Use the promo code RAM, RAM, or Romeo Alpha Mike for you super cool types. Head on over there. You'll get some nice cuts, a little bit. Basically saying RAM is like saying I know Tucson. And that's a pretty big deal. You can list that on your resume. RAM over at mypill.com. All right, Juan, take that down. Last plug, CPAC, Conservative Political Action Conference in Orlando, Florida. Next weekend, Right America Media with your boy 2 Cent will be live on the 25th, the 26th, and the 27th. Mark it down. Follow me here on the YouTube. We'll be going live a lot. We're going to be doing interviews. We're going to be in the room when 45, possibly 47 is speaking. We're going to be talking to a lot of great people. Mark it on your calendars. The February 25th, 26th, and 27th. I will see you Monday at 7:30 p.m. Have a good night.
Welcome to KSoK Uncensored. Tonight's very special guest is Scott, the father of Grace, who recently passed at the hands of hospital protocol. Please come on in, Scott. Hi, Scott. How are we doing today?
I'm doing all right, thank you.
I have to tell you, I was reading Grace's story, and I immediately was like, this is so wrong. I have to do something. And then I pulled back and I said, we are able to do this, and that is get the word out there to the audience that we have. And I'm just so proud of you as Grace's father to really be fighting this fight. It's an uphill battle, especially in the political climate we have right now. And it's amazing what you're doing for her. And I just want you to know I'm very touched by the fight that you are up against right now. And I don't even have words, Scott. I want to just give a little opener here on what happened, and I am going to refer to my notes to make sure that everything is accurate here. But basically, on October 6th, Grace, Scott's daughter, was brought to the hospital for COVID-19 treatment. She did pass on October 13th. Now, there was a lethal combination of drugs given. And I've been doing research on this today and spoke with somebody that I'm a dear friend of mine who is a registered nurse and has worked on COVID floors for the past 2 years. She was given Presidex, lorazepam, and morphine, all within a 30-minute period of time. Now, in looking at those drugs, all of them seem to have this calming, really they're given to calm the brain, calm the body. So why all three at the same time? And I understand, Scott, that's the question. Why? And it's been incredibly difficult for you to receive an answer. And at this point in time, you still don't have an actual why this cocktail of drugs was given to your daughter. Where are we at right now? Where are you at right now with trying to obtain medical records or some type of rationale for this?
Well, that's a great question. So we were fortunate to get all the medical records within a couple weeks after Grace died, and then we started going through them, and with the purpose at that point of having a meeting with the hospital. So we put together a request to meet with the hospital CEO and the doctor on November 8th. We had gone through all the records by then and started to be able to piece it together. And so then I wrote a 15-page letter. My daughter Jessica wrote a 9-page letter. And then we had all the supporting documents. We sent all that to the patient relations with the request for the meeting. And then they denied the meeting on December 2nd. And that's when we went public, where we started the process of going public, filing complaints and then news media, et cetera. So you asked, where is it at? Well,
Right.
the research. So we had a doctor involved right away to try to make some sense out of it because, all these terms, I couldn't pronounce any of them to start with. Now I know them probably better than most of the doctors. But
Right.
so what she concluded after going through the records, I'll just read it because it's very powerful.
Absolutely.
So this you have to go back to a little bit before the combination of meds. So the combination of meds that you referenced, Precedex, lorazepam, and morphine, were all given in a 30-minute window on Grace's last day. And so specifically, she was on a dose of Precedex that was 14 times the dose that was started. Then she was given 2 doses of lorazepam within 3 minutes of each other, followed by a 2 milligram dose of morphine as an IV push, which means that it was instant. So those 3 together like that, very, very few people could have survived. We got a hold of an intensivist, which is the doctor that would be able to make this type of judgment call. And he wrote, Scott, I agree the medications killed your daughter. The doctor that we worked with to go through the records, I'm going to back up just a little bit because Precedex really set the stage for this. So you asked, do we know anything from going through the records? Well, we pieced a lot together because the hospital basically denied any wrongdoing. So, they don't have a reason. The doctor gave us a reason for the morphine in that he called at 6:45 p.m. He gave her the morphine at 6:15. He called us and said, Grace had a good day. I just gave her 2 milligrams of morphine. My wife, Cindy, and I asked why. And he said, well, her breathing was at 51 breaths a minute and I needed to slow it down. And so we didn't think anything of it, thought, he's the doctor.
Right.
But so that's the only explanation that we had. So then you start digging and think, okay, well, what's going on here? I'm not a real trustworthy person in the hospital. And, so that's why one reason I was an advocate. Of course, I was an advocate because my daughter had Down syndrome. But the things that they did make you very distrusting. And if we have time, I can go through a couple of examples. But this Precedex
Absolutely.
idea is really, really important to set the stage because 4 days before Grace died, they started Grace on a low dose of Precedex. So Precedex is a CNS, a central nervous system sedative. So it works in the brain to slow everything down. There was absolutely no reason for this for Grace. I mean, Down syndrome children are, they're just naturally calm, and Grace was calm. They started this. So Grace died on the 13th. So they started this on the 9th, and I was still in the room then, so I didn't know that they started this Precedex. They started on a low dose, 0.1 units. So we don't know if it was milliliters or what units means because we don't. The hospital records didn't disclose that, but it's still relative. So she started on 0.1 units. Then on the midnight of her last day, they had that dose at 8 times the dose from 4 days earlier. Now, Precedex and all these drugs have a rule of engagement called a package insert. Every drug that is provided by medical staff has a package insert, which is the rules they have to follow. The Precedex package insert says that it's only supposed to be used for 24 hours. So they're already in violation of the package insert. So now she's on
Wow.
4
So
days.
let me just
4 days.
can I just clarify? They were using Precedex since day one.
Not day one. Day one, the first day in the hospital, they did use Precedex. At my agreement, I approved it because we were wrestling with Grace to get the BiPAP situation, and she
Sure.
was pretty restless. But I mean, I approved it
Right.
for that event, and then they took her off of it. And then they put it back on. So I mean, she had the day off of it. They had her on her for a few hours to settle her down that first night, and then and I approved that, and then took it off, and which was fine. I thought she was still off of it, but they
Right.
put it back on. As I've connected the dots, I believe they put it back on because as soon as a patient is on a sedative, which that's what Precedex is, the room gets
Right.
classified from a regular room to an ICU room. So now they get a government bonus, a COVID bonus,
Oh.
for classifying it as an ICU room. Furthermore, and maybe more important than that classification, is that any patient that's sedated, the hospital can deny your right to take the patient out of the hospital. So now they're locked in there. So now we get to
Wow.
Grace's last day. They already had her up to 0.8 units, so 8 times the amount at midnight. And if you walk through the day and what happened, now the doctor called us at 8 o'clock in the morning. So this is on October 13th, Grace's last day. And he told us Grace had a good day yesterday, and I think we should put a feeding tube in. And the purpose of a feeding tube is to get Grace nutrition. Well, she could have
Right.
got nutrition just by feeding her, but they refused to feed her. We foolishly agreed to the feeding tube, and I'm going to just put that aside in the timeline for a minute, because at this point, Jessica was the advocate. I was taken out by an armed guard on October October 10th, Sunday the 10th. So now Jessica stayed overnight on the 12th. She got up on the 12th, and she wanted to take a shower. There's a shower in Grace's room. They told her you can't take a shower in the room. When I was in the room, they said I couldn't leave the room, so I had to take a shower in the room. So Jessica runs home quick. She comes back inside of an hour, and she overhears 2 doctors in the hallway say that the parents aren't going to like this. And so she says, well, what aren't they going to like? And what they told her is that we put Grace in restraints, strapped her down to the bed because she wanted to get up and go to the bathroom. So that was another excuse then that they used to increase the dose of Precedex. So Grace becomes almost completely out of it. Now they put a feeding tube in. So now she's, think about getting a feeding tube in. She's agitated at that point. So now they ratchet up by 10:48 in the morning. They're at 14 times the dose, the original dose, 1.4 units. Then at 11:25, they did the first dose of lorazepam. At 5:46 and 5:49, they did 2 doses of lorazepam back to back. And at 6:15, the morphine. So at that point, at 6:15, she had Precedex at 1.4 units, the 2 doses of lorazepam, and then the morphine. So
Oh,
when I see it, you start wondering what's the reason why. And we'll come back to that because I want to finish out this story so you can connect the dots. So anyway, that answers your question as to what do we know about the meds. And we
Oh.
can go on to finish that day out if you'd like to do that next.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, there
Sure.
were a few, I do have a few questions for you because I was thinking,
Sure.
I was looking at the feeding tube piece and I was like, oh, she must have been intubated. But it sounds like she was not intubated
No,
and
he
they
was not
still were
intubated.
going to go with the feeding tube?
Well, they were going with the feeding tube because that's one of the stories I'll share with you. I mean, it's such a strange environment in that hospital. So on October 9th, Grace didn't eat much on the 8th. She got up on the 9th. She's hungry. She had a BiPAP mask on, so I ordered, she told me what she wanted off the menu. I ordered it and I started feeding her. And, it's not that she can't feed herself. Grace was high functioning. Grace rode a horse, drove a car, played violin. Grace
Wow.
was very high functioning, but, she couldn't feed herself with that BiPAP on. So I started feeding her. The nurse comes running in. You can't do that. I said, well, why can't I do that? And she said, well, the oxygen saturation is at 85%. And so because I made the decision to stay with Grace in the hospital, which of course you're going to, I knew I was going to, or I expected, I didn't know for sure, but I expected I was going to catch COVID from her. So I had all of my COVID things in there, the ivermectin and all the thing, and the oxygen saturation meter. And so then I put the oxygen saturation meter on her finger and it read 95. So I called the nurse back in and I said, my meter reads 95. Is it accurate? She said, yes. I said, well, how come I said, why does my $50 meter read accurate, but your $50,000 machine doesn't read it accurately? And she said, the leads get sweaty. So they're talking about the leads that were on Grace's finger. I said, well, if you know that, think what's happening. This is the primary measurement you're using for my daughter's care. So if you know that,
Right.
what if you proactively change these leads out every 3-4 hours or whatever it takes so you have accurate reading? And she snottily responded, you should just be thankful that you caught this. This struggle with there was multiple of these battles ultimately leading to me being taken out by an armed guard. I mean, it wasn't a physical battle, but I mean, the armed guard or the head nurse said 3 shifts of nurses don't want you in the room. Well, of course they don't. They don't want somebody challenging, and I've come to believe it's all part of an agenda. It just there's too many coincidences and circumstantial evidence to not think it's anything but that. So,
Oh, absolutely. I have to tell you, Scott, when I spoke to my friend who is the RN and has been on COVID floors for 2 years, I said, is there any reason that the medical power of attorney and father should have been removed by an armed guard? And he said, only if there's like visiting hours that have expired and somebody refuses to leave. He's like, other than that, that shouldn't happen. And so I am curious, and not that I think that's right. I think you should be able to be right by somebody's side 24/7 to be their advocate. You need an advocate in the hospital. Like that's
absolutely.
just even before all of this COVID nonsense. But was it within visiting hours and it was just literally they didn't want you in there because you were in their way and you actually asked them questions?
Exactly. This confrontation with the nurse was one of many. So, ultimately, this combination of meds. I just want to finish that off. I started saying I wanted to read the doctor's quote, but I needed to give you the backstory of Precedex. So this is from the doctor who helped us go through the records and sort things out right after we got them. She wrote, Precedex is a med used for anesthesia to put people to sleep for surgery and procedures. Depending on the dose, it can induce a coma-level sleep. Each of these meds, Precedex, lorazepam, and morphine, on their own, have an increased risk of serious or life-threatening breathing problems and cardiac arrest. And there's an additive effect when used in combination. To use them as they did in a person with a diagnosis of acute respiratory distress is beyond believable as to intention. And I'm going to give an exclamation point to that because I referenced the package insert. So the package insert for morphine has what's called a black box label. These are the absolute have-tos. The black box label says that you're not supposed to, and this is really what the doctor said, you're not supposed to use morphine with a benzo, which is lorazepam, or a CNS depressant, which is Precedex, because it can cause death. And if you use morphine regardless, you're supposed to have the reversal drug at bedside because of problems using morphine. Well, they didn't have the reversal drug at bedside. In fact, what happened after this lethal dose was given at 6:15, remember the doctor called us at 6:45, Then my daughter Jessica, who is now the replacement advocate, she called us at 7:20. She's on FaceTime. My wife and I are watching, and she's saying, "Dad, Grace's numbers are dropping like crazy." And I said, "Get the nurses in." She said, "I already tried. They won't come in." At this point,
Oh,
she estimated roughly 30 nurses in the hallway because it was shift change. So now we start hollering, "Come and save our daughter." And they holler back to us from the hallway, "She's DNR. Do not resuscitate." And we say, "She's not DNR. Save our daughter." This is the first that we knew she's DNR. Jessica, afterward, I'm just going to read this. Uh, I have almost 500 hours of research. That's why I have all this paperwork. I mean, I've
oh my
everything down.
gosh.
So wondering why this DNR situation, she said she wrote, one nurse read off what the computer stated and that the doctor labeled her as a DNR, which they claimed they couldn't do anything about. So the doctor put a DNR order on Grace. The DNR statute is statute 154 in Wisconsin, several subsections, but they violated 3 subsections with that. Number 1 is the power of attorney, which wasn't me, it was my wife, was supposed to sign any DNR order. So that didn't happen. We didn't know there was a DNR order. Number 2,
Wow.
they're supposed to put a bracelet on anybody that has a DNR order. There was no bracelet. Number 3, and most important with the fact pattern I just gave you, is that the patient or the advocate or power of attorney can override any DNR, even if the patient put it on themselves by saying, "Revive me," or "Come and save her." Us telling them to do that overrides the DNR that the doctor put on, but they would not come in the room. In fact, it actually gets worse than that. There was an armed guard posted outside the room, and it gets even worse than that. So now after Grace died, I drove my wife to the hospital. I couldn't come in because I had COVID. So she's
Oh,
up there. Our pastor met us there. And as the pastor's wheeling my wife out in the wheelchair, one of the nurses has got Grace's belongings on a cart wheeling them out. And she said to my wife, "Me and some of the other nurses don't think Grace should have died today."
oh wow.
So now
Wow,
you put
that's
this all,
powerful.
I know it's powerful. You put it together and you think, what the heck was going on? So now, you start reading and you read things about rationed care and the money. Um, and Grace was on Medicaid. Because she had Down syndrome, she has a disability. She's on Medicaid. So the ration care idea is coming from the elites. They want to take out the older people in the population, what they call the deplorables. So Grace is
Right.
in the deplorable category from the people that don't care, that are making the decisions, who run this country. And I've come to the belief that that's why she was taken out. The day that she was taken out, the hospital capacity of beds, they were at 100% capacity. So we would not approve a ventilator, which she didn't need a ventilator. She was never close to needing a ventilator. And
Right.
so the amount of money they were making on Grace was a fairly low amount. And they had people in the emergency room stacked up like cordwood. So in my humble opinion, they took out Grace because of the combination of rationing care to the deplorables and the money involved. This deplorable idea is not a joke either. This last weekend, I spent many hours. I combed through all the records one more time, actually 2 more times, and they referenced the fact that Grace was not vaccinated 6 times in the records. Um,
Really?
they referenced that she had Down syndrome 36 times in the records.
Oh my gosh.
In this quote I'll give you from the COVID expert, so the person in charge of the COVID care on that floor of the hospital, what he wrote in his report from October 8th really tells you what they were thinking relative to Grace's care. This is a quote right out of his report. He said, "He, the father, me, believes in the frontline doctor stuff and does not really believe or trust us here in the healthcare setting, which I think is going to be the detriment to his daughter, to be honest."
Wow. So that's in the medical charts?
Yeah, that's right in the report.
Oh my goodness.
This isn't my opinion I'm talking about. And
Wow. It's wild to think. I mean, it's like it's like so many people. I talk to people all day long about what's happening right now, and we speculate, right? We're constantly thinking what you're telling me right now and exactly what your daughter went through and what you've gone through in your family. We're like we're speculating that that's likely happening, but to actually hear and have it confirmed that that is the
well,
experience,
it
it's
really happened,
terrifying,
and we were in the
heartbreaking.
room. Yeah, I mean, hardly anybody in the entire country has been in the room because they have this shroud of secrecy. They tell you, well, the hospital policy doesn't allow you in the room. Well, we were in the room, so these have become facts, and that's what makes um, this is quite a unique case. Uh, it's
Right.
unique because of my daughter, but I mean, she's the motivation of going public with this. We want to help save people's lives.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that is just horrifying. I have and Scott, I just want to pause again. I as you were telling your story, I'm like fighting. Not that there's anything wrong with crying, but I just want you to know I feel this raw emotion because I can't even begin to put myself in the position that you're in. And so I'm just so sorry. Sorry,
Well, thank
Juan.
you. Sometimes
Woo!
I can't
And
get
it's
through it. I can't get through it myself, but I'm okay right
oh
now, thankfully. But it's tough.
wow. And I can't help, I have a like I mentioned before we started recording, I have a daughter who has epilepsy and she's had two brain surgeries and like to think about to just even like put myself in the position of not being I mean we were able thank God we were able to be like right by her side 24/7 because most of it was before all of this COVID nonsense and all the protocols but to and believe me I know from early on when she was being diagnosed with epilepsy like you said you're like an expert on these on terminology now and you could like
Right.
you do as a parent you do you read through everything because you find that you have to be the advocate it's wild how much you have to be the advocate and I completely agree like I don't just trust hospitals anymore at all like you have to do what you were doing and Scott I just want to say I heard you say this a few times that you gave them the okay on this and I know you're likely, feeling it maybe in some sense responsible for some aspects of it. Gosh, don't do that. Right? Like just if you're doing that, don't do that. You're fighting. Look at what you're doing right now. You're fighting like heck for Grace and getting her story out there. So and you're doing it so that other people don't have to suffer the same grief you are and your daughter did. And so I just really want to commend you on that and we want to help you as much as possible getting the word out and this is a real eye opener and I actually have somebody one of my girlfriends I've known since kindergarten her uncle just passed and there were very questionable circumstances in the or things like this that were happening in the hospital and her they're going to go public with it soon too and that's in the state of Washington and it's absolutely terrifying and so horrible that you just went through this and and there's so many untold stories out there right now too and
Well, there's tens of thousands of these stories.
uh,
Uh,
right
Unfortunately, most people you just think about their thought process is, well, my dad or my grandpa went in for COVID, and he died of COVID in the hospital, and they never think about getting the records. They just take what the hospital told them as the truth, um, and it's simply not the truth. When you start, some of them I'm sure did die of COVID, but I would say based on what we put together, that is the minority share. Grace did not die of COVID. Grace went into the hospital with low oxygen as a result of COVID, and I went into the hospital 3 days after Grace died with symptoms about 3 times worse than her. And the difference was, of course, I lived, but I didn't live because of I would have died at St. Elizabeth's Hospital too, where she died. But I went into a different hospital in Green Bay, and they followed a completely different protocol. And I just about died the first night. That's how bad I was. Where Grace went into the hospital, she was great. And
Wow.
within 24 hours, I knew I was going to live because their protocol was completely opposite of what was used on Grace. So the protocol is what killed her. Just in general, I mean, they're following this COVID script, but then you throw in these meds and a unilateral DNR, and of course, then you start really wondering what the heck was going on. Just because
I
people would be wondering, I mentioned about frontline doctors. I mean, I believe in
mm,
that. I believe in it wholeheartedly. Grace and I. So you think, well, why did we end up in the hospital if we're following that protocol? Well, the reason is if on our website, so our website is ouramazinggrace.net. We have a link to Dr. Chetty. He's a South African doctor. If you're interested in really drilling it down, he's probably invested more time than any doctor in the entire world figuring this out. And he has concluded that there's a certain percentage of the population that has a genetic propensity to produce inflammation and clotting. And that's what I believe. Grace inherited that from me. And I've had a clotting issue known before and an inflammation issue. And so both of those Grace likely inherited. And so my wife had COVID too. She didn't end up in the hospital. We all had it at the same time. And
oh
so
wow.
Grace and I ended up there, and you can't prevent that. You, if I knew then what I know now, Grace wouldn't have gone into the hospital. We would have still went to the emergency room. But then what we would have done is checked out and got a prescription for oxygen and a steroid, and Grace would have recovered at home. But at that point, I didn't know that. So one take
Right.
home message from this conversation is, it's just because I went into the hospital and Grace did, and we're on the frontline protocol. Take what we learned. I mean, so this doesn't happen. Neither Grace
Right.
or I had to go check into the hospital. We did because we didn't know we could get prescribed oxygen at home at that point.
Scott, I didn't know that either. And actually, that's very interesting that you said that because I was talking to my husband and I was like, this is when my girlfriend was telling me about her uncle. And I said, it makes me want to go buy oxygen tanks and have them at my house. Like, seriously. I didn't
And
know
you,
you
you
could get a
actually can.
prescription.
Well, you can't get tanks at home, but you can get an oxygen generator at home. I bought one off
Okay.
of Amazon after I learned of this. You can get your own oxygen at home. It's just not in a tank. You really wouldn't want the
Okay.
tanks. I had tanks after I got out for 2 months, and you burn through an oxygen tank too fast. You need a generator, so it's making oxygen. Um,
Very
the tanks,
interesting. I had no
tanks
idea.
are really, yeah, they're just for portable use.
I see. Okay. That's really good to know. My husband's going to be like, oh, great. She's buying something else. Every time I learn something new, I'm like, oh, I'm buying it. Oh gosh. But seriously, I mean, it's not, it's something that I think people should really look into having in their household. Um, I had no idea until just now that you could get a prescription. And it's wow, yeah. I mean, we just can't put the trust in the hospitals anymore. I have to ask you, Scott, because my friend, I was asking about the DNR, and
Yes.
especially so because your daughter had Down syndrome, so naturally you were the medical power of attorney, and so naturally they should be referring to you before placing that. My again, my friend, my source, he said yes, that should not be, that should not have happened. You can't, a doctor on their own cannot, according to him, just make somebody DNR. Has anyone, what are people in the hospital saying about that? Like, why is is it different state to state, or how do you just make
Well,
somebody
I mean,
DNR without referring to the family?
yeah, I mean, technically, my wife was the first power of attorney and I was second, but that doesn't matter. I mean, she should have had to sign it. But regardless of that, what the hospital uses the excuse is they claim that the discussion that we had with the doctor um, regarding a ventilator, so that's called DNI, do not
Right.
intubate, not DNR, do not resuscitate. So we requested do not intubate on purpose.
Right.
And the reason is they wanted to put a ventilator in Grace the second day, and
Of course they did. That is horrible.
and it's terrible. And what they how they couched this request for the ventilator was that we want you to decide ahead of time, because this is how they would say it: these type of things tend to happen in the middle of the night when we can't get a hold of the parent. So we want to be able
Oh,
to do this, just in case. Well, just in case to them is based on the financial gain. It isn't based on what the need is. And
wow.
I the what I witnessed in the hospital is proof to that. I mean, they're arbitrarily lowering Grace's oxygen, as I said before, because they don't have accurate leads. When I combed the bill that they sent to Medicaid for Grace, remember I challenged the nurse about these leads. They replaced the leads in 7 days. They replaced the leads 3 times. They billed Medicaid for $234 for 3 lead replacements in 7 days.
Oh,
That's crazy. They should have been
yeah.
replaced. It's so. I mean, they already were arbitrarily lowering her oxygens on the charts, and it wasn't as low as what they said. And then they put her on Precedex. Why? Because they're setting her up for a ventilator.
Right.
And
Right.
she was
Exactly.
never at that. She was never at that point. The other example I could share with you, just to prove the point, is on October 8th. This is Grace's second day in the hospital. A doctor came in at 8 o'clock in the morning and said, Grace, your daughter is going to have to go on a ventilator in the next 2 hours. I said, what is that based on? And he said, the blood gas, which is a certain draw they do, the blood gas numbers from last evening. I said, well, what time were the blood gas numbers drawn? And he said at 11:30. And remember, I told you about getting the BiPAP on Grace. Well, we had just got done working with her on that, and I said, I don't think those numbers are accurate. I said her blood pressure was 235 over 135, and her heart was racing at 150 beats a minute because we were wrestling
Wow.
with this BiPAP. And so I
Right.
said, I want you to retake the numbers. And so they retook the blood gas numbers, and of course she was fine. I mean, so he wanted me to make the decision on the ventilators based on faulty numbers. Fortunately,
Oh
I
my
challenged.
goodness.
I mean, this
That
stuff, that's the
it just
difference between
wow.
having an ad. I mean, think about if there's not an advocate in the room. So, of course, she'd already been on a ventilator. So I want to just nail this for your audience. So if you have a combination of COVID bonus payments, the average bonus payment from the government to the hospital per COVID patient is $100,000. So you have a combination of money, immunity from liability. So the doctors, all the medical staff have immunity from liability. So we don't have a practical leg to stand on for suing them because they're immune from liability. And then lack of advocacy. So now we were in the room and look what happened. So now COVID bonus, immunity from liability, lack of advocacy. Now just process how many people they can kill that way.
Oh,
They get a
that is a
$13,000
recipe for
bonus.
disaster.
It's a
So,
recipe for disaster.
I just real quick, I want to ask you, Scott. Because I was thinking about that. I'm like, I wonder if there's litigation happening right now. Why are they not held responsible? Is it just because of the COVID protocols, and government backing, or why is there a lack of accountability?
Well, COVID's been used for an excuse for all kinds of things. So, I mean, there's
Right.
even beforehand, the state statutes really limited the liability claim. Because Grace was 19, she's a legal adult. So then most claims are based on loss of companionship. Once somebody's an adult, there's no loss of companionship. So that got rid of that claim. The malpractice claim, this is clearly malpractice. But we talked with probably the best malpractice attorney in the state, and he said, there's a statutory limit of 750,000. And so I said to him, well, what's the reason there's a limit? And the lobbyists for the doctors have gotten the limits put in place in almost every state in the country under the idea that if doctors can be sued, you're not going to get people to practice medicine. So they have this
Wow.
limit.
Okay.
And furthermore, the limit is the attorney can only take 33 1/3%, so the family gets the balance. So I said to him, we're not after any money. What if I just sign over our 66 2/3%? He said, you can't. State statute doesn't allow you to sign over your percentage. So,
Okay.
and then the third piece of that, he said, even in slam dunk cases like this appears to be, there's only a 1 in 10 chance because these doctors circle the wagons around their own. They come out to protect their own. Ascension
Right.
Hospital System is part of the system that Grace died in. You know, they have 26 billion in cash. They're huge. You know, you
Yeah.
can't fight.
They're
You can't fight
untouchable.
them.
No?
Right. So
Oh,
they're not
the
untouchable if
system
you
is
can
so
band together.
broken. What a broken
Right.
system. Seriously. Lack of
It's really
accountability.
broken.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, and I'll just put this out there. There's a series that's called Dr. Death, and it really hits home how difficult it is to hold a doctor responsible. And I know there's amazing doctors and nurses out there, but there are there are some that are not good, and they've lost. It's like they're no longer human. They're just a machine, and to hold them accountable, hold them responsible, it is nearly impossible. And watching that series on Dr. Death, it's like it was real stories about real people, real doctors, and nothing was happening. And so really scary stuff. So we have to be our own advocate and our advocate for our family members now more than ever. And Scott, I really appreciate you getting this story out there. I know this is beyond difficult, beyond what you can even wrap your brain around, like myself. But what you're doing right now is likely saving lives. And I just really appreciate the time that you've spent. Would you say 500 hours of research? And that's, you're not done. You're doing interviews daily. I mean, you're doing so much, and so I really admire you for what you're doing for your daughter.
Don't admire me. I mean, I sense God is behind this, and of course, my daughter Grace, I'd do anything for her. So,
Yeah.
I'm just I'm just the one that got picked to do this, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do so, and I'm humbled by the media, that the interest, and of course very thankful. This is the least that we could do to honor our daughter.
Oh, well, Scott, I hope you don't mind. You'll be in my prayers because that's really heavy and touching. And I just want to give you a hug, and I can just tell you're such a nice person. So just thank you for your time, and it's really nice to have met you.
Well, nice to meet you too, Kate. Thank you.
All right, keep fighting.
Will do.